All right, welcome back to Clash of Cultures as we continue our 2023 college football team preview. This stop is going to be the Miami Hurricanes, the U. But before we get into Miami, we got to continue to give thanks to everybody who's been following the channel. We appreciate all the love and support. Please press the like button and the subscribe button. This started out as a passion project for our father and son. Just really taking conversations that we had over the phone and sharing them with all you guys. We didn't expect to have nearly the amount of love that we've gotten, so we appreciate you guys. Please keep rocking with us. There is so much more to come. But with that being said, Stephen, what's your thoughts on Miami this year?
So the U. So I said this for Notre Dame. I said this for Texas. I might have said this for USC. Miami is another one of those teams where you want them to be relevant in college football. They arguably have the best college football team of all time in the 2001 Hurricanes. So, I mean, they haven't really been back to prominence in, how many years? Almost like 20 years since they were really at national attention. I know they've been to the ACC title game a few years back and lost to Clemson, but, national hype, kind of having that noise surrounding them. Last year, they had a sub 500 year. After Tyler Van Dyke won the ACC Rookie of the Year in 2021, he took a dramatic step back last year, partially due to injuries. I know he didn't play against Clemson. I think he only played 9 games last year. Lackluster stats. I won't read the stats. He had lackluster stats last year, which led to ultimately firing the old offensive coordinator and grabbing Shannon Dawson, who was a brilliant offensive mind for Houston. His quarterback at Houston just broke the American Conference record for total passing touchdowns. I think it was 40. So he broke that record. So I anticipate a really pass-heavy offense for Tyler Van Dyke. They've always been able to recruit well with being that kind of quote-unquote featured program in college football with the likes of Alabama, USC, Texas's of the world. They brought back Henry Parrish, who was a leading rusher from last year, 600 yards and 4 touchdowns. They brought him back. They brought back Colby Young at wide receiver, 400 yard, 5 touchdowns. And as a Clemson fan, a lot of people don't know this guy's name, but there was an underrated transfer pickup. They picked up Frank Ladson Jr. He's a former 4-star, top 75 ranked player out of high school. He obviously went to Clemson, tried to join like the wide receiver U movement. The last 2 years or so, our wide receiver core has been terrible. He didn't really get the burn that he wanted to get. Didn't get the playing time. So he went ahead and transferred to Miami. He's originally from Florida. I expect him to have crazy numbers there. He's a freak of nature athlete. So that's what I expect. The offensive line seems to be revamped. The additions of Francis Maigoa, 5-star, 6 overall player, number 1 offensive tackle in the class. Yeah. Samson Okunlola, 5-star, 21st overall player, number 1 offensive guard in the class of 2023. So you brought in 2 of the top 3 offensive linemen in the class who I know Mayoga is penciled to start, but they have Okunlola as a backup. He's probably going to get a lot of playing time. Mm-hmm. Matt Lee, offensive line transfer from UCF. Yep. And then Javion Cohen, transfer from Alabama. So I think just when you look at that, this team is primed to come back offensively. Defensively, they should be decent. I know they brought back Cameron Kitchens. He was a safety All-American. I know he was all-first team in the ACC, but he was an All-American as well, nationwide. They have a plethora of 4- and 5-star recruits because they recruit so well. So, I think Miami has a chance to do something special in the next couple of years. But I will say this before I kick it to you. I think Miami, of all the teams in the ACC, are going to hurt the most with it being divisionless now. The reason why I'm saying that, they were in the Coastal.
Yeah.
And Clemson and Florida State were both in the Atlantic. So really, the Atlantic was sort of like how it is in the Big Ten with, Penn State, Alabama, or Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan. So Miami had kind of the easier route to get to the ACC championship game. Now they have to have the second or first best record to get to the conference championship game. And I don't know with how Florida State and Clemson are the trajectory right now. I don't know if Miami's going to be able to do that. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think you're very right. I think those are the very valid points. I have to bring up Mark Fletcher, the freshman running back. Yeah. I think him with Henry Parrish, they're going to make a nice little running back duo. But I think this season is all about Tyler Van Dyke. I think we went into last season with high hopes for him. Some places, some people had him in early preseason Heisman talks. So the fact that, and like Stephen mentioned, a plethora of reasons why he didn't live up to that last year. But hopefully he gets back on that trajectory, because I believe that he is the key to what Miami is this college football season. If he is good, Miami's going to be competitive. If he is not, if he plays similar to what he did last year, and I know Steven said he didn't mention him, but we're talking about starting quarterback, 10 touchdowns, less than 2,000 yards passing. Miami is probably going to have another down season. The talent is there, but a lot of movement. We talked about a lot of the movement on the offensive line. 3 new offensive linemen from that team. They lost what was in respects their number one receiver, the tight end Mallory is gone. They are replacing him with Cam McCormick. So a lot of change here, and it's a matter of how it all comes together. So the potential is there. I think this is all about Tyler Van Dyke and how he can really kind of find what he had his freshman season. Because again, if the injuries persist, if the inconsistency persists, like I said, Miami's going to have another down season.
And I will say this. I think even though I said that they're going to be kind of hurt for the divisionless football in the ACC, when you're looking at Miami's recruiting from the 2023 class and on, I'm not going to sit here and have a hot take or a bold prediction and say that they're back. But I will say, so in comparison to Clemson and Florida State, so Clemson signed 11 players in the ESPN top 300 in the 23 class. Florida State only signed 7. Miami signed 14. So they have, better all around, top to bottom recruiting classes than their counterparts in the ACC. Not to mention they signed 2 top 20 players in the class. And I don't think Florida State or Clemson did that.
Yeah, just as we talked, right? We talked about the 2 linemen that we suspect are going to contribute. We talked about Mark Fletcher, Emory Williams, Nathaniel Joseph, Tommy Kinsler. So they have, and that's just offense. Damari Brown, Ruben Bain. They have a bunch of freshmen that I suspect in some capacity are going to contribute on the team this year, that are going to get some burn. Now, that may be a bad recipe for 2023, but I think as we look 2024 and beyond, especially, and this is the hard thing to say in this transfer portal era, especially if they can keep them in Miami, we may be looking at something.
So ESPN has Miami ranked as the 29th best team coming into the season. My apologies. I feel like that's seemingly fair. That's probably where I would have them. They have their win total at 7.8, so we'll just round it up to 8. I think that's about right as well. Yeah. But let me go ahead and pull up the schedule. We can kind of break this down. I think their schedule is pretty spread out. When you're talking about, good game or tougher opponents and lesser opponents. You start off with Miami of Ohio. That's probably going to be a win. A&M should be a competitive game. I know we did an A&M video already. That game should be competitive. You have Bethune-Cookman. That game is probably going to be a wash. Temple might be a wash. Then you get into conference play. You got Georgia Tech. That game was probably going to be competitive, but I favor Miami in that game. Then you got Drake May in North Carolina, Clemson, Virginia, NC State, Florida State, Louisville, Boston College. So I would say 8 wins seems about right. They're probably only going to be underdogs in 3 of these games. I would say Florida State, Clemson, and North Carolina. Depending on how A&M looks in week 1, maybe that game. But that 8 wins looks about right. I wouldn't have anything to say about that.
Yeah, no, that's very close. Again, what I'm looking at when I'm looking at games they can lose, right? I think they can lose to Texas A&M. Like you mentioned, Georgia Tech. I think they can lose to Georgia Tech again, just like you. I suspect they'll pull that off. We'll see what Louisville is this year. We'll see what NC State is, especially without Leary this year. Boston College, I think, is going to be very tough this year. So I think, like you said, there'll only be the underdog in 3 games, but there's some other games out there that kind of loom, especially, like I said, if Van Dyke is not solid, that I would have their floor at probably something like 7-5. I'd have their ceiling probably at something like 10-2.
Okay, we're pretty much the same there. I have their ceiling at 10-2, but I have their floor at 8-4. I think Their floor to me would be they lose to North Carolina, Clemson, and Florida State, and then maybe drop to Louisville, NC State, or something, or maybe A&M.
Right.
But I predict them to go 9-3 this year. But I'm gonna go kind of unconventional. I think they beat North Carolina, and then they lose to Clemson, Florida State, and they lose to another team, and they go 9-3.
I'm gonna go 8-4. I'm gonna go 8-4. I think they're going to lose to 3 teams that you said that I think they're going to be underdogs in those games. And then I think they drop one of those other games. Like I said, whether it be the Boston College, Louisville, Texas A&M, one of those other games.